I always thought betrayals came crashing down like thunder, loud, obvious, dramatic. But mine arrived like a whisper through static, a single line through the speakers, not even meant for me. It was raining that morning, not pouring, just that kind of steady drizzle that makes everything feel slower. I remember the wipers thudding in rhythm, the red brake light stretching for miles ahead, and the low rumble of the news station murmuring in the background. I was barely awake, the coffee in my thermos untouched, my tie still crooked from a rushed goodbye. Lena had left 10 minutes before me, like she always did. Her routine was precise. Purse on shoulder by 7:35. Kisses my cheek, never my lips. Always grabs a protein bar but never eats it. Says she's got a stand-up meeting at 8 o'clock sharp. I knew that stretch of I-5 like the back of my hand. Knew which exits always bottlenecked, which semis always blocked the fast lane. We used to joke that I could drive it blindfolded. Maybe that's why I didn't notice the strange chime at first. It was a soft blip from the dash. A device pairing. Bluetooth. I glanced down. My phone was still in my jacket pocket. No calls. Then a second beep, and I saw it. Connected to Lena's iPhone. She must have forgotten to disconnect when she drove off this morning. I hadn't even realized the cars were close enough for her phone to latch onto mine. That's when her voice came through, clear as if she was sitting right beside me. "Ray, I can't talk. He's still home." A pause. Then a click. Call ended. I didn't even realize I'd stopped breathing. It took a few seconds for the silence to settle, like the car itself was processing it with me. The rain still tapped on the windshield. A baby cried 2 lanes over. Somewhere, a car horn blared in frustration. But in my car? Just that line, replaying itself in my head. He's still home. She hadn't said my name. But who else could she have meant? Who else would still be home at 7:45 a.m.? I stared at the dashboard, at the Bluetooth icon still glowing like it was proud of itself, still tethered to her voice, still humming with the trace of something I hadn't been meant to hear. She wasn't calling her boss. She wasn't heading into work. She was driving somewhere else, to someone else, to Ray. I don't remember much about the next 20 minutes. I must have driven. Or maybe the traffic just carried me along like a current. I couldn't stop picturing her mouth forming those words, her fingers pressing the screen, the casual cruelty in how she said it. Not, "I can't talk right now." Not, "He's here." But "He's still home." Like I was the problem, the obstacle. When I finally pulled off into the side lot of a gas station, my hands were shaking. I parked under the awning, engine idling, the rain pattering softly against the roof. I just sat there, staring at the steering wheel. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I didn't even call her. I just listened to the silence, to the space where trust used to live. My phone buzzed then. A calendar reminder. Lunch with Lena, 1 p.m. Her idea. She'd insisted on it. Said we'd been drifting lately and needed to check in. I opened her location. We'd shared them ever since our phones updated a year ago. She said it made her feel safer. And it did. For a while. She was nowhere near her office. Instead, her little dot hovered at an address I didn't recognize, about 15 minutes west. A quiet cul-de-sac, mostly residential. My thumb hovered over the map, numb. I didn't think. I just started driving. Every block felt heavier than the last. My heart beat like it was trying to warn me. But my body was ahead of my mind, already steering through streets I didn't know, toward a truth I wasn't ready for. I slowed as I approached the street. The houses were all the same, gray siding, trimmed hedges, empty driveways. Middle class, middle of nowhere peace. And then I saw her car, parked cleanly in front of a brown brick house, the kind with flower pots on the porch and a flagpole in the yard. I parked across the street, engine off, windows up, rain still falling. I waited. 5 minutes. 10. She didn't come out. Then the front door opened, and a man stepped out. Tall, early 40s. Navy sweater. Comfortable. Confident. He leaned against the doorframe like he belonged there, like he was used to seeing her walk up those steps. A moment later, there she was. Lena. Smiling. No purse. No protein bar. No sign of work. Just her. Stepping lightly into his arms. Letting him kiss her. On the lips. And then she disappeared inside. The door shut behind them. And I sat in my car, blinking through the rain, wondering how many mornings had started like this. Wondering if she kissed him first, then me. If he was Ray. If she laughed when I left for work, or if I'd just become background noise in her new life. My phone buzzed again. Another calendar reminder. Lunch with Lena in 3 hours. She had planned to look me in the eyes, sit across from me, order a salad, maybe touch my hand, say something about how stressed she'd been, lie, smile, go back to him, like nothing had happened, like I didn't already know. I didn't call her. I didn't go to work. I just sat there, watching the house, watching the rain, letting something inside me break quietly, invisibly, like it had already broken a long time ago, and I was just now noticing the cracks. I didn't follow her inside. That's what you might expect, right? Bust down the door, confront them both, shout, throw something, maybe cry. But I didn't. I watched. Because something about how easily she'd stepped into his space told me this wasn't new. And if it wasn't new, then she'd grown careless, complacent. People always do when they think they're safe. That gave me time. And right then, time was the most dangerous thing I could have. After about 30 minutes, she came back out. Alone. Hair tucked neatly behind one ear. She was wearing a scarf now. It hadn't been there earlier. Her lipstick was reapplied. Different shade. She didn't see me. Not even a glance. She just got in her car and drove away like it was any other Tuesday. I waited a beat, then pulled out and followed her from a few cars back. I wasn't trained for this. Not a cop. Not a detective. But I'd spent enough years learning her rhythms to know how not to be seen. She drove straight to her office building. Parked in the same spot she always did. Walked in like she hadn't just spent the last hour wrapped in someone else's life. I sat in my car, engine running, rain still ticking against the windshield. My knuckles were white on the steering wheel. My mind already separating into compartments. One for shock. One for rage. One for everything I hadn't said. And one for the plan. Because I knew I wouldn't confront her today. Not with anger. Not with emotion. I would wait. Watch. Listen. Make her feel safe. And then I'd bury her. Not literally. I'm not that kind of man. But emotionally? Socially? Legally? I'd been a quiet husband for 7 years. The kind of man who remembered anniversaries, bought flowers on Wednesdays just because, learned to make her favorite soup from scratch even though she hated cooking herself. She'd always called me reliable. Her friends said I was the kind of guy you marry. And maybe that was the problem. Maybe she wanted a different kind of guy. Maybe his name was Ray. That night, she came home late. Said she'd had to stay for a project kickoff meeting. Her makeup was perfect. Too perfect. She always touched it up before walking into the apartment, but tonight it looked fresh. She dropped her bag on the table and kissed me on the cheek. Same routine. Same breathy, hey babe. Same faint perfume I didn't recognize. Dinner was quiet. She asked about my day, and I told her work was slow. That traffic had been worse than usual. That I'd almost missed a meeting because my Bluetooth glitched and started playing some random audio. She didn't flinch. Just nodded and said, technology's such a pain. No flicker. No pause. Smooth. She poured herself a glass of wine. Red. Just one. Sat on the couch and scrolled her phone, curled up like everything was normal. That night, while she showered, I opened her laptop. It was still password protected, but I knew the code. My birthday. I don't know if that was irony or laziness, but it worked. There were no messages from anyone named Ray. Not an email. Not in texts. Not in saved contacts. But there were 2 folders on her desktop, both dated 3 weeks apart. Both named with project codes she'd mentioned in passing. The first folder was empty. The second had a PDF titled Agreement Client Onboarding. I opened it. It wasn't a client doc. It was a hotel receipt. One I recognized. A place just outside the city. Pricey, but not flashy. The receipt was for 2 nights. 1 room. Booked under the name L. Morrow. Lena's maiden name. And the guest email? A burner Gmail account. But it was signed in at the bottom. Thanks again for your loyalty, Ray. I stared at the screen until the shower stopped running. Then I closed everything. Cleared the history. Put her laptop exactly where it had been. She walked into the room wrapped in a towel, hair dripping down her shoulders. Gave me a quick smile. You okay? Yeah, I said. Then I kissed her forehead and turned off the light. That night I didn't sleep. I watched her instead. Her chest rising and falling. Her hand twitching in her dreams like it always did. And I thought about all the ways you can burn someone without lighting a match. The next morning, I called in sick. Said I had a stomach bug. Lena left for work around the same time as always. Purse, protein bar, cheek kiss. I watched her from the window. As soon as she turned the corner, I got in my car and drove back to the brown brick house. The one with the flagpole and flower pots. I parked 3 houses down and waited. About 20 minutes later, a black SUV pulled into the driveway. Ray. He looked like the kind of guy who always wins arguments. Hair too neat. Shoes too clean. The kind of smile that never reaches his eyes. He carried himself like a man who'd gotten away with worse. I took a photo. Then another when he checked the mailbox. Then I followed him. He drove to a downtown law office. Walked in without looking back. 10 minutes on Google told me the rest. Raymond J. Conrad. Partner. Real estate and litigation. Divorced twice. No kids. Voted most charismatic in some alumni newsletter 10 years ago. I saved the photo. That night, Lena was late again. Said the project was ramping up fast. I nodded. Said I was proud of her. She smiled, leaned into me, and said, I'm lucky you trust me. I smiled back. Of course. But in my head, something cracked. It wasn't a clean break. It was slow, deliberate, the kind that waits until the whole thing collapses. Because I'd seen Ray. I knew the hotel. And now I knew Lena's tells. The way she looked at her phone before she smiled. The way she said project when she meant him. I wasn't going to stop it. I was going to let it play out. And when the time came, I'd be ready. By Thursday, I had every login she still used. I didn't mean to be the guy who snoops, who checks messages behind someone's back. But I was already a man looking at the ruins. What difference did it make if I stepped on the ashes? Her email. Her calendar. Her Uber account. The pattern was always the same. Mondays, she met him at the hotel near the park, check-in at 7:50, check-out by 9:10. Tuesdays and Thursdays, she drove to early meetings in the West Side District, which just happened to be where Ray's law office was. Wednesday nights? Pilates. Or so she said. I checked the studio's site. She hadn't booked a class in over 3 weeks. It wasn't that she was gone often. It was how easily she lied. How softly she said it all. Just a long day. Crazy morning. Love you. The kind of lies you don't hear until they echo. I started logging everything. A spreadsheet tucked inside a folder called Work Budget Q2 on my desktop. Times. Dates. Receipts. Her little blips of absence. Screenshots of Uber pickups from that address. GPS timestamps. Every one of them a quiet pin in the map of her betrayal. I wasn't angry. Not in the way people expect. It was quieter than that. Anger is hot. This was cold. Methodical. And I needed to know how deep it ran. So I tested something. I made a fake profile. Not on anything romantic. That felt beneath me. I made a new client inquiry. Marcus Spain, Gmail account. Said I was looking to purchase a foreclosed property out in the hills, high value. I said I'd been referred by a former colleague of Ray's. Threw in some buzzwords about quiet dealings and confidential planning, the kind of bait that a real estate litigator might sniff around. Ray responded within 2 hours. He was enthusiastic, aggressively so. Said he could absolutely assist discreetly, that he'd handled similar clients before. We scheduled a meeting. I didn't plan on showing up. I just wanted to know how fast he moved when money was involved. Turns out, fast. Too fast. And when I didn't reply, he followed up 3 times. That's when I saw it. In his follow-up email, he mentioned Lena by name. Said she'd spoken highly of me, that she was personally invested in the deal going smoothly. She wasn't just visiting him. She was vouching for me, for a fake man who didn't exist. I don't know why that part hit me harder than the rest. Maybe because it was professional, not emotional, not some moment of heat. She had built plans with him, woven me into lies outside the bedroom. It meant he wasn't just a secret. He was her second life, and I was the cover story. Friday came, and she asked if we could go away for the weekend. I found this little cabin online, she said, spinning her laptop toward me. It's by a lake. No signal. Just us. Could be nice. The photo on the listing showed a cozy wooden cabin tucked into a tree line, golden leaves scattered across the roof. It looked fake. Too symmetrical. The kind of place someone chooses for the optics. We need a reset, she added, voice softer. I know I've been distant. Distant. That was her word. Not disloyal. Not unfaithful. Not caught on Bluetooth telling a man she couldn't talk because I was still home. Just distant. I stared at her across the table. Her smile was small, hopeful, or practiced. And I said yes. Because if there's one thing I've learned about liars, it's that they get clumsy when they're watched too closely. They fumble details. They try too hard to control the narrative, especially when you agree with them. That weekend, I would see her up close, with no distractions, no traffic, no early meetings. And if I was right, she wouldn't be able to keep it up. We left Saturday morning. I packed the car while she made coffee, humming. She wore the sweater I bought her last Christmas, the one she hadn't touched in months. Said it made her feel safe. I wondered if it was guilt or performance. The drive took 2 hours. She talked most of the way about work, her team, a new onboarding system. I nodded when she paused, offered the occasional or you think so, when it seemed appropriate. I didn't challenge anything. Just watched her closely, like a man learning to lip-read a foreign language. The cabin was nice. Too nice. Stone fireplace. Candles in every room. Clean, but not sterile. And exactly one photo on the mantel, a stock image of a couple holding hands in silhouette. She made us dinner that night. Her famous risotto. Burned the bottom slightly. Laughed about it. Afterward, we sat in front of the fire, her feet tucked under her, sipping wine. She looked over at me with those eyes, hazel, soft-edged, and said, "Do you still love me?" And for a moment, I didn't know if she was acting, or if the truth had suddenly begun to eat at her from the inside. Yes, I said, and I meant it. Or at least, I meant the version of her that used to be true. But then she reached for my hand, laced our fingers. And in that moment, I remembered her in front of Ray's door, smiling like a woman who had already moved on, who kissed 2 men in the same day and still felt entitled to say she was distant. So I said, "Why did you want to come here?" She blinked. The question caught her off guard. "To reconnect," she said. "Too fast. You felt so far away lately." I didn't respond, just looked at her until she filled the silence. And I needed space. From everything. From all the noise. "You needed space," I repeated. She nodded. "I know that sounds bad, but I've been stretched so thin." I leaned back. The fire popped. And then I said something I hadn't planned. "Who's Ray?" Her wine glass froze halfway to her lips. The room went quiet. Her eyes didn't widen. She didn't gasp. She didn't ask which Ray. She just froze. And then slowly, she set the glass down. "What did you hear?" So that was it. No denial. No confusion. No innocent act. Just surrender. "I heard everything," I said. She was still for a long time. Then she said, "It wasn't supposed to be anything." At first, I laughed. Quiet. Hollow. And I stood. She reached for my hand, but I stepped back. Her face fell. "We can talk," she said. "I'll be honest now. You were already honest," I said, "when you didn't know I was listening." She didn't cry. That's what surprised me most. Lena had always been good at crying when it counted. The kind of tears that came in perfect measure, not too dramatic, not too dry. Enough to evoke guilt, to pull the moment back in her direction. But that night, in the cabin, with the fire fading behind her and my words still hanging in the air, she didn't reach for that old performance. She just stared. Then finally she said, "It didn't mean what you think it did." I almost laughed again, but my throat was tight. I sat down instead, not across from her, but angled, watching the flicker of the firelight catch on her face. "You should stop talking if that's your opening line," I said. She nodded once, slowly, like she understood. Or maybe like she was calculating what I already knew. "How long?" I asked. Her voice was low. 5 months. Give or take. "Ray," I said, and she flinched, just barely. "You know you're married?" "Yes. At first." I told him it was complicated. "But he knows. Does he care?" She hesitated. "Not really." There it was. That soft rod in the middle of her story. It wasn't love. It was convenience. Novelty. A place to rest when reality felt stale. I stood again. Paced once. Her eyes followed. "Was it just him?" I asked. She shook her head. "No. Just him." "Why him?" Her silence was longer this time. She looked down at her hands. Her thumb picked at the edge of her nail. "A nervous habit. One I used to find endearing." "I don't know," she said finally. "He made me feel not married." Does that make sense? It did. That was the worst part. Because the lie buried in her answer was the one she believed herself, that marriage had somehow happened to her. Like a weight. Like a job title she never applied for. I said nothing. After a while, she tried again. "I didn't mean for it to go this far. But then you got distant too. You stopped seeing me." I turned. "I stopped trusting you." "That's not the same thing." "It is," I said. "It becomes the same thing when you make it a habit." She stood now too. Closed the distance between us. Not to embrace. Just to be near enough to look into me. "You don't have to forgive me," she said, voice soft. "But I want to try. I want to fix it." I looked at her. At the woman I'd known since college. The woman whose favorite cereal I still bought, even though she hadn't touched it in weeks. The woman who'd once cried during up, but hadn't shed a tear when I buried my father. And I said, "You don't want to fix it. You want to reset it. Erase the bruise. Not learn from it." That ended the conversation. She went to bed first. I stayed by the fire, long after it had gone cold, watching the shadows shift across the wood-paneled walls. I thought about all the men who never knew the moment it broke, only the moment they finally looked up and realized they were the only one trying to hold it together. In the morning, she made coffee. Quietly. Wore the same sweater. I accepted the mug but didn't drink from it. We didn't speak on the drive back. Back at the apartment, she unpacked like nothing had happened. Folded her clothes. Hung up her jacket. Opened her laptop at the kitchen table, the way she always did when she was pretending to be normal. I watched her from the hallway. That night, I slept in the guest room. And that's when her behavior started changing. Not overtly, but in the small, desperate ways of someone who's been caught and is still trying to reshape the narrative. She started asking more questions. How was your day? Want to go out this weekend? Do you still want me here? She cooked more, stayed home more, turned off notifications on her phone when I walked in. But it was too late. You don't get to break something and then try to polish the pieces. I never raised my voice, never told her to leave. Instead, I started preparing. I filed for a legal separation the following week, quietly, through a lawyer a friend recommended. Lena hadn't touched our shared finances in months. She'd been spending cash from her own account, likely fed by Ray or some joint project. But I still had access to her purchase history. She bought a burner phone, not long after the cabin. I didn't confront her, just made a copy of the receipt. By now, she'd noticed the distance, how little I touched her, the way I stopped offering details. I'd become silent, but still calm, which made her nervous. She brought up therapy over dinner one night, said she thought it might help, said we could rebuild like we used to be. I nodded, and the next day I followed her again. Not far, just to a grocery store. But she never went inside. She sat in the parking lot, phone to her ear, windows cracked. She stayed there 22 minutes. When she came home, I was already in the garage, fixing a shelf she said was loose. How was the store? I asked. She blinked. Fine. I didn't correct her, just returned to my work. That night, I called Ray. He answered on the second ring. This is Ray. Hey, Ray, I said calmly. This is Lena's husband. Silence. Then a sharp inhale. What do you want? He asked, his voice shifting. No longer confident. Just alert. I want you to know I know. That I've known for a while. That I'm not going to ruin your career or your life or make a big scene. Good, he said. Because I didn't. But, I interrupted, you're going to leave her alone. You're going to block her number, delete the burner account, and never speak to her again. He hesitated. You don't get to control it. I do, I said. Because I have all the messages. All the receipts. The hotel bookings. The transfers. Your firm's involvement. I even have the PDF she accidentally saved to her work laptop under your initials. You're bluffing. I'm watching you hang up on me right now, I said. Which tells me I'm not. He paused. The line was dead quiet. I could almost hear his jaw tightening. You could have just gone to her, he said finally. I did. She lied. Then folded. Now it's your turn. Then I hung up. The next morning, Lena was quiet. She didn't know about the call, but she felt something. Maybe it was Ray's silence, or the way I handed her coffee without looking her in the eye. Later that week, she asked if I still loved her. I said, I used to. She cried then. Real tears this time. And I let her. But I didn't comfort her. Because this wasn't the end. It was only the breath before it. The thing about betrayal is that it doesn't end with the last lie. It echoes. Carries forward into every glance, every silence, every tiny decision. The way she said good morning. The way she lingered before leaving for work. Everything about her became suspect. And everything about me became strategic. I didn't ask questions anymore. I let her think the storm had passed, that my anger had softened, or maybe that I was trying, in my own quiet way, to forgive. But the truth was simpler. I was waiting for the last card to fall. And it came on a Wednesday. She got a call around 3 p.m., just as I stepped out of my home office to grab water. Her phone was face down on the counter, but I saw the screen light up. RJC, do not answer. She picked it up too quickly, turned her back toward me like she was checking a weather app, then shoved it into her back pocket. That told me everything I needed to know. Ray hadn't let go. Or maybe Lena hadn't. Either way, it meant the story wasn't over. That night, I texted a friend who worked in private security. Nothing shady, he'd been in the military, now handled digital risk for local law firms. Discreet. Smart. No judgments. Need a favor, I wrote. Looking for deleted messages and call logs. Android. I'll pay. He responded 10 minutes later. Send me the backup. You'll have everything by tomorrow. I waited until Lena went to bed. Then I plugged in her phone. Synced the data to my drive. She didn't have a password on her cloud account, just facial recognition, which, in a dark room, a photo of her own face worked just fine. The next morning, he sent me a zip file. Recovered threads, Lena and Ray. I read through them with a kind of dead calm, like I was reading someone else's story. They talked daily, sometimes only a few lines, sometimes long, elaborate strings of text about how he's pulling away, and just a little longer, and maybe after the holidays. He told her he loved her. She never said it back, but she didn't have to. She'd sent him photos. Ones I'd taken of her in a dress before a wedding, her curled up with our dog, her laughing at a birthday dinner. She'd forwarded them like memories from another life, like I was just a camera, a backdrop. One message stopped me cold. Ray, so? Have you talked to him about separating yet? Lena, not yet. He's too quiet, watching everything. I think he knows. Ray, then what are you waiting for? Lena, to be sure. Sure of what? That I'd let go? That I'd give up the house, the shared accounts, the name? That's when it hit me. She wasn't staying out of guilt. She was staying to leverage the exit. If she filed first, she'd lose the narrative. But if I gave up? If I packed a bag, signed something out of exhaustion, let her leave without consequence? She'd walk away clean, maybe even with sympathy. But I hadn't come this far to hand her an alibi. I booked an appointment with my lawyer that afternoon. Had her draft a formal separation agreement. I'd done my homework, asset division, no alimony, sole ownership of the condo, it was mine before the marriage, and a clause preventing use of marital funds for third-party relationships, retroactive to 6 months prior. Everything was legal. Everything was backed by receipts. I just needed Lena to sign it. The next evening, I set the papers on the dining table. Clean white folder. No drama. She came home late. I was already seated, sipping tea, nothing unusual in my expression. She looked at the folder. Looked at me. What's this? Separation agreement, I said. She stood still, not surprised, just calculating. I thought we were working on things, she said carefully. No, I said. You thought I was pretending to work on things. Because you were. I was building an exit. I didn't ask for this. No, I said. You asked for time, space, distraction, lies. I'm giving you something better, clarity. Her eyes flicked to the document. She didn't move toward it. Is this really how you want it to end? I leaned forward. Lena, it ended the moment you answered that call in traffic and didn't realize I could hear you. She sat down across from me. Slowly, as if proximity might shift the outcome. You don't have to do this, she said, voice softer. We can still try it. No, I said. We can't. She looked down. For a long moment, neither of us moved. Then she said something I hadn't expected. Ray's gone. I tilted my head. Since when? 2 days ago. He said he was done, that I dragged it out too long. And you? She shrugged. I didn't fight it. I wanted to feel something when she said that. Relief, maybe, or rage. But all I felt was nothing. Just confirmation. The story was over. They both lost interest when it got inconvenient, when it demanded actual sacrifice. She slid the folder toward her, flipped the cover, scanned the terms. Her fingers trembled, just slightly, when she got to the clause about marital funds in the retroactive window. You knew, she said. Everything, I replied. She didn't cry, but her voice cracked when she said, I didn't think you'd be this cold. I stood. I'm not cold, Lena. I'm clear. Then I left the room. I didn't slam a door. Didn't yell. I just walked into the night air, stood on our balcony, and let the city lights flicker in my periphery. 20 minutes later, she signed. I found the folder on the table, her signature sharp and angry. But legal. That weekend, She moved out, took only her clothes and some framed photos, left the coffee maker, left the couch, left the scarf she'd worn the morning I heard her whisper Ray's name. She didn't leave a note, and I didn't ask for one. The silence came slowly. At first, it was gentle, a kind of hush that felt like relief. No more rehearsed excuses. No more staggered laughter from the next room, muted through a locked bathroom door. No more tension hiding in the spaces between "I'm home" and "what's for dinner?" Just stillness. I moved her things into storage, kept them in a clean, rented unit just outside the city, one key, no forwarding address. Her scarves still smelled faintly of citrus and something floral. I didn't open the boxes again. The house felt bigger without her, but not in the way people imagine. Not spacious. Just exposed. Like I'd pulled the furniture away and found stains beneath it. Corners that never got light. There's a certain kind of damage you only notice once you're alone. For a while, I kept the routines. Coffee at 7. Office at 9. Dinners alone at the counter, phone beside me, screen dark. Nobody texted. Nobody called. She didn't try to come back. That surprised me. I thought there might be one last email. Something with the subject line, "just one more thing," or "please read this." But the inbox stayed clean. The voicemail empty. Maybe Ray had been her parachute, and without him, there was nowhere to land. Maybe she was ashamed. Or maybe she was relieved too. It didn't matter. The apartment became mine again, slowly. I changed the light bulbs she always said were too warm. Took down the art she picked because neutral tones sell better if we ever list. I let the kitchen go dim in the evenings, and that was fine. Quiet, but fine. My lawyer finalized the separation by early April. The financial side had been clean. She didn't contest the clause about third-party spending. I think part of her expected me to. Maybe even hoped I would. That I'd drag it out, scream, force her to play the victim one last time. But I didn't. That was the last gift I gave her. No performance. Just closure. I started seeing a therapist. Not because I couldn't handle it, but because I wanted to understand how I had. How I'd stayed calm through the entire collapse. How I'd planned my exit while sleeping beside someone who could lie through a kiss. The therapist said something that stuck. You were never in denial. You were just waiting for the silence to be louder than her words. Yeah, that felt true. Because by the end, Lena's voice had become static. Familiar noise I learned to tune out. And when I finally turned off the signal, I didn't miss the sound. I missed the space it used to fill. Not her. Just the idea of her. The story of her. Some people leave like doors slamming. Others like candles burning out. Lena left like breath in cold air. There, then gone. I ran into Ray once. About a month later. At a fundraiser for a mutual colleague, one of those crowded hotel ballroom events where people make conversation over overpriced drinks and silent auctions. He didn't see me at first. I watched him hover near the bar, laugh too loud, slap backs like nothing had happened. Then his eyes met mine. For a moment, he froze. I didn't smile, didn't nod, just looked at him until he turned back toward the exit, tossing his half-empty glass on a tray without a word. That was enough. I didn't need more. The truth had already undone him. And Lena? I heard she moved into a condo downtown. Smaller. Sleek. The kind of space people rent when they're trying to feel unencumbered. She went back to using her maiden name professionally. Posted photos of rooftop brunches with old friends. Smiling. Always smiling. But it never looked the same. Not to me. The last thing she left behind was a plant on the windowsill. One of those little succulents that barely need attention. It had wilted in the weeks after she left, slowly shriveling into itself, like it knew something was missing. I almost threw it out. Then I didn't. I watered it once. Just to see. 2 weeks later, it sprouted again. Tiny. Fragile. But real. I kept it. And that's where it ends, I guess. Not with revenge. Not with fire. Just me. and a quiet apartment, and a life that no longer bends itself around someone else's shadows. Sometimes I think about that morning, the traffic, the static, the voice over Bluetooth. That one sentence, cutting through the noise like a needle to the chest. Ray, I can't talk. He's still home. Still home. As if I was the one in the way. The one clinging to something already dead. She never knew what that line cost her. She never asked. And I never told her. Thanks for watching. If this story pulled you in, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss the next confession. Until next time, take care and watch who you trust.